Hello, my name is Major Mike Webb, and I am a retired field grade Army officer, branch of military intelligence, who formerly served as the operations officer for all Army strategic counterintelligence in the continental United States. And the topic of the day arises from recent alarming reports in the news media about new variants of a novel coronavirus and more infectious strains about which apparently some in the scientific community in a pandemic panic have become concerned. So, for the next few minutes, we shall be providing an information brief to address some of these concerns and to correct some misinformation being disseminated by the news reporters who, more likely than not, as in our current example, medical doctors nor actual scientists by training or experience, but rather just reporters trying to take in a fire hose of information about complex topics under pressure, and especially in a pandemic panicked environment, more times than not, they do not always get things right. In the very first major report on a novel coronavirus emerging in China, the World Health Organization expert epidemiologist stated as one of the primary concerns and one of the best practices was to make sure that the general public is most informed about the virus so that they can use that information to be prepared. This briefing is unclassified. Unlike a commissioned Army officer in the combat arms who will spend his training learning hands-on how to lead a combat platoon in infantry tactics or gunnery, with the real equipment in a field environment, the Butterbar Second Lieutenant training in tactical military intelligence will literally be in a classroom environment learning about doctrine, developing analytical skills, becoming familiar with capabilities and nomenclature, culminating with about a week in a capstone field training exercise that they are all too anxious to end, that even then is only a simulated battlefield environment against a simulated invisible enemy. So when the combat arms Butterbar Lieutenant arrives in his first unit of assignment, he can hit the ground running with a little real-life experience to perform his job well in the field. But a tactical intelligence officer on his way to his first assignment in a tactical maneuver battalion will arrive at his unit to work in the headquarters, and when they go to the field, he has about a week of simulated training under his belt before he has to stand up in front of a field-grade officer who will be his potentially senior raider to provide a brief on what he believes the enemy situation looks like and anticipate what they might be expected to do. And if that is your first introduction to your battalion commander, more likely than not, that is not going to be a good meeting, because the senior officer that you are supposed to be providing information knows a whole lot more than you do. And he is only going to let you do what you are doing because that's just the way that we do things in the Army. If you are not in a combat line maneuver battalion, maybe you are lucky enough to get an easygoing battalion commander who wants to be your friend, who does not want to hurt your feelings and make you feel uncomfortable speaking in front of a large group of people about something you're only guessing about at most. But if you are in a hard-charging, battle-focused maneuver battalion, you can pretty much rest assured that you are going to feel some tremendous evolutionary pressure, at least in part for the purposes of officer development. And if you don't like it, there are plenty of jobs in the private sector. According to a recent article titled, "New Coronavirus Variants Keep Popping Up," here's what we know about them. Published by Maggie Fox, the senior health news editor based in D.C., who has become the designated COVID-19 expert at CNN, a variant suspected of helping fuel a surge of coronavirus in Brazil's Amazon region shows up in Minnesota. Another that's been worrying officials in South Africa pops up in 2 places in South Carolina. She reports scientists are not surprised to see the coronavirus changing and evolving. It's what viruses do after all. And with so much unchecked spread across the U.S. and other parts of the world, the virus is getting plenty of opportunity to do just that. So the first question is, who is Maggie Fox? Is she a doctor? Is she a scientist? No. According to CNN, Maggie Fox has been writing, reporting, and editing health, science, environment, and technology stories for more than 20 years. But she also has worked at Reuters, National Journal, MSNBC, and NBC News, and contributed to Stat News and News Decoder, as well as NPR and WAMU's 1A show. Isn't that nice? She describes herself on her LinkedIn profile as an experienced reporter, writer, and editor, deeply sourced with years covering medicine and science, climate, politics, conflict, and life in the Middle East, Asia, Europe, and the Americas. And she claims that her specialties include health, science, and medicine, as well as policy and politics. So maybe we can get her to do brain surgery on someone. Senior editor of health at CNN. That's what her title is. But apparently this graduate of the University of South Carolina, despite completing fellowships at the National Institute of Health on Genetics, kind of like being an intern, at Harvard Medical School on infectious disease, and at the University of Maryland on child and family health policy. Prior to joining CNN, she worked at Reuters, where she was responsible for coordinating coverage, not reporting, but coordinating coverage of stories ranging from the swine flu pandemic to AIDS, malaria, and the politics of stem cell research. And for her first 5 years at Reuters, she was not reporting on health at all. Even at Reuters, she did not report on health news, but rather was responsible for overseeing coverage. But she did apparently write some articles on subjects ranging from healthcare reform to space science to cancer, heart disease, and bird flu. Isn't that nice? And at least according to Maggie, who is now telling you what whoever we is supposed to include know about the new COVID-19 variants, is that scientists are not surprised to see the coronavirus changing and evolving. It's what viruses do after all. And Maggie claims that with so much unchecked spread across the U.S. and other parts of the world, the virus is getting plenty of opportunity to do just that. Just like any other virus, one would imagine. But first, most Americans by now are pretty familiar with the thought that viruses mutate. Like all living organisms, mutate. So her conclusion that this is what viruses do actually sounds a bit moronic to a scientist. But what do scientists know about mutations that apparently Maggie does not, or just didn't include in her letting us know everything about coronavirus's report? Where do we begin in the textbook for Virology 101? All facts that the leading infectious disease control expert should know better than anyone. This briefing has been unclassified. That concludes this brief. My name is Major Mike Webb, and by God, I am running for governor of Virginia. I ask every Christian, every conservative, every Republican, every Virginian, and every American tree to, like the motto of the infantry, follow me, and we shall overcome. Honestly. And y'all come back now. Here. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.